Welcome to a presentation on neoclassical physics. Here we explain all physical phenomena, including quantum and relativistic processes, in classical terms, with a little modification. This is the closest thing to the grand unified theory as of now. Neophysics has the most accurate theories of physics. We challenge you to disprove us. If not, we welcome you to join us in the revolution. In this presentation, we discuss about the unrestricted three-body problem in two dimensions. Here we clearly see the difference between 1. Newton's method of framing equations of motion, and 2. The method based on using energy and angular momentum conservation principles for framing and solving equations of motion. We find that Newton's method only produces a subset of the solutions that we get from the conservation laws. The solutions we get from conservation laws are stable and there is no chaos in the three-body system. Suppose R1, R2 and R3 be the three position vectors of the three masses M1, M2 and M3 interacting gravitationally. Suppose U1, U2, U3 be the unit vectors along the three position vectors. Suppose U1 prime, U2 prime and U3 prime be the unit vectors perpendicular to the vectors U1, U2 and U3. In this figure, U1 is directed towards mass M1 and U1 prime is shifted by 90 degrees, and so it is perpendicular to the direction of the vector R1 or vector U1. U1 and R1 are both directed towards mass M1. Only the vector U1 has unit length. So using these notations for position vectors and unit vectors U's and U primes, we can write the three acceleration vectors as shown here. So these are the U1, U2, U3 components related with the position vector, and these are the U1 prime, U2 prime, U3 prime components related with the perpendicular direction of the position vector. So the acceleration with scalar magnitudes specified along the unit vectors U's and U primes are shown here. So from Newton's second law of motion and his law of gravity, we get that these three equations in vector form, that is d square r1 by dt square is basically determined, the force is determined by the contribution from mass m2 and mass m3 and the distances between them, and similarly for vectors r2 and r3. So equating these two sets of equations, we get a set of three equations for these terms in the square brackets representing the scalar magnitudes along u1 prime, u2 prime and u3 prime unit vector directions. So these are the equations we get for the scalar magnitudes along the u1 prime, u2 prime and u3 prime direction. More detailed step-by-step analysis is present in the PDF related with this video. You can check that on neophysics.com. So we can note that the RHS of these three equations have terms that mutually cancel each other on addition. The first equation has sine theta 2 minus theta 1 term, while the second equation has the same magnitude term with sine theta 1 minus theta 2 factor, which cancels each other. Similarly, we have sine theta 3 minus theta 1 term in the first equation, which cancels the sine theta 1 minus theta 3 term in the third equation. And the sine theta 3 minus theta 2 term in the second equation, which cancels the sine theta 2 minus theta 3 term in the third equation. Therefore, adding the three magnitudes associated with u1 prime, u2 prime and u3 prime directions, we get a 0 on the right hand side. The magnitude terms associated with the u1 prime, u2 prime and u3 prime are related to the time derivative of angular momentum as shown here. The term m1 r1 square d theta 1 by dt is the angular momentum associated with the first mass, or mass m1. Similarly, these two terms are also related to the time derivative of their respective angular momentum. This is for the second mass and this is for the third mass. These are the d by dt's of angular momentum. Therefore, the u1 prime, u2 prime and the u3 prime components encode the rotational motion of the three bodies. For making the analysis simpler, let us assume that the center of mass of the three body system is also the origin 0, 0 of the coordinate system. Further, we assume that the origin is also the center of revolution. That is, this r1, r2, r3 vectors which go into angular momentum calculation, they are with respect to this center of revolution, which is also the center of mass and which is also the origin. So using the center of mass equation, we get this condition. So from the assumption that center of mass is equal to origin is equal to the center of revolution, we get this condition: m1 r1 by sine theta 3 minus theta 2 is equal to these terms here. Using this condition in the equations related with the time derivative of angular momenta, that is these equations, we get the following type equations where we can eliminate one of the sign terms in this equation. For example, in the equation related with mass m1, we can eliminate the sine theta 3 minus theta 1 term and replace it with equivalent term with sine theta 2 minus theta 1 factor. That is, we replace these two terms by this term here in terms of theta 2 minus theta 1. Similarly, we can rewrite the equations related with the mass m2 and m3 as shown here. These are the u2 prime and u3 prime components. So let us now make one last assumption required to get repeatable orbits, also known as Lagrange periodic orbits. In the two-body case, we note that the two bodies are along a straight line passing through the center of mass or center of revolution, and that their angular disposition is not altered during motion. Similarly, let us assume that the angles between the position vectors r1, r2 and r3 are constant in time. That is, the objects do not alter their relative angular disposition during motion. Let us call these relative angles as alpha, beta and gamma. So note, alpha plus beta plus gamma is 2 pi radians. So due to this assumption, we get that the three angular velocities of the three masses must be the same. That is, they must be same. It's not constant. It's just that the three angular velocities are the same at all time instant. So by using the assumptions that the center of mass is the origin, is the center of revolution, and the assumption that the relative angles are constant here, alpha, beta, gamma are constants, we get this condition: m1 r1 by sine alpha equals m2 r2 by sine beta equals m3 r3 by sine gamma. So this is the three-body configuration. This is m1, m2, m3. This is the center of mass and the center of revolution, and we have assumed these alpha, beta, gammas as constant. And these are the three radial position vectors, r1, r2, r3. Since alpha, beta and gamma are constants, rearranging this above expression, we get this expression on the right, which basically implies that the ratios of the distances r1, r2 and r3 remain constant. Let us call the ratio R2 by R1 as mu2 and the ratio R3 by R1 as mu3. Mu2 and mu3, as we can see from here, are completely determined by the angles alpha, beta and gamma and the masses of the three bodies M1, M2 and M3. Therefore, using the fact that the relative velocities are equal and the ratio of distances remain constant, we can write the magnitudes related with the unit vectors u2 prime and u3 prime completely in terms of the magnitude related with u1 prime. That is, these are the terms related with u1 prime. The term related with u2 prime is just proportional through a constant to the u1 prime component, and u3 prime component is also proportional to the u1 prime component through a constant. So these are related to the first term through a proportionality constant. So we saw earlier that the summation of these three terms related with u1 prime, u2 prime and u3 prime must be 0. Since the second and the third term are related to the first term through a proportionality constant, we can get this equation from this. That is, we take the first term common out and then we write out the proportionality constants here. So this equation must be 0. So this implies that each of these three terms are themselves 0, which indicates that the angular momentum conservation of each individual mass, that is, the angular momentum of each mass is being conserved. That apart, we get that these equations are 0. These are the equations we saw earlier related with the u1 prime, u2 prime, u3 prime components. So these are individually 0. That means these terms, this is the only way they can become 0 when these terms r1 minus r2 equals r1 minus r3 and r2 minus r3 is r2 minus r1. Basically, therefore the final solution according to Newton's method ought to have an equilateral triangle configuration where these three r1, r2, r2, r3 and r3 minus r1, these three are the side lengths of the triangle of the three body configuration and r del is the side length. They have to be the same. So r del is the same side length for all the three sides. So basically this is the diagrammatic representation of that. Newton's method implies that the periodic orbit solutions must have this equilateral triangle configuration. So all these three sides r del, r del, r del are constant or the same, not constant. So applying the cosine rule in these subtriangles, this is r1 beta r3 and r1 gamma r2, in these subtriangles, by applying the cosine rule we get this relationship between the three sides and the angles and r del. So ultimately we can express the equilateral triangle side length, that is r del, in terms of m1, m2, m3, which are the masses of the three objects, and alpha, beta, gamma, which is the angular disposition between them, which is constant. But because of the equilateral triangle condition, we can also express these angles alpha, beta, gamma purely in terms of the masses m1, m2, m3. Suppose L1, L2, L3 be 3 points forming an equilateral triangle circumscribed by a circle with unit radius. So let us assume L1 is this point x1, y1, which is 0, 1, and L2 is this point and L3 is this point. These are the 3 points on a equilateral triangle with a unit circle radius, circumcircle. So in this case, the side length of the equilateral triangle r del is square root of 3. This is just a sample triangle we are considering to calculate the relative angles between the three position vectors. So therefore the side length r del becomes square root of 3. Using the values of m1, m2, m3 and the descriptions of the points L1, L2, L3, we can calculate the center of mass of this three body system. This is with respect to a slightly different coordinate system, not with the center of rotation or center of mass system. This is the system in which this circle, the origin of the circle, is at 0 0. So with respect to that system, we find that the center of mass x cm and y subscript cm get these values. So the angles formed by the lines joining the points L1, L2, L3 from the center of mass x cm comma y cm gives the values of alpha, beta, gamma. So basically we make this construction, this small triangle R del equals root 3, just to calculate this alpha, beta, gamma. So once we calculate, once we construct that, we find that the lengths R1, R2, R3 can be calculated by simply considering the Euclidean distances from the center of mass xcm comma ycm to L1, L2, L3. So these are the Euclidean distances. So these are the definitions for R1, R2, R3. The same length ratios hold at any other scale. So this was a small scale triangle, but the same length ratios that we get from here between R1, R2 and R1, R3, these ratios hold good for any other scale. So using this, we can find the angles alpha, beta, gamma using this R1, R2, R3 by plugging the values of R2, R3, R del and all this here. We can calculate alpha, beta, gamma using the reverse of the cosine rule here. So using these relationships that we found between R1, R2, R3, R del and the angles alpha, beta, gamma in the Newton's force balance equation, we finally get a simple one body approximated version of the force equation, that is this. So here we replace all these distances by R del and then we simplify, we get this equation. This finally reduces to equation of this one body approximated form, where d square r1 vector by dt square is minus g m, big M, by r1 square in the direction of r1, or this is u1. So here the mass m can be written as this: m1, m2, m2, m3, and where m1, m2, m3 are the three masses specified of the three objects, and this small m is defined as this in terms of m1s and m2s and the ratios mu2 and mu3. So this is the simple one body approximated version of the force equation. This equation gives conic section solutions. That is, we get circle, ellipse, parabola and hyperbola solutions from this, depending on the eccentricity we choose. And this big M here is the effective mass causing the motion of the position vector r1. In terms of r2 and r3, if we want, then this value of m will change. We'll get a different formula. And so small m is as defined here. So this will be the solution according to Newton's method. Suppose now we consider a simple case study. Suppose all the masses are equal or the same. That is, m1 equals m2 equals m3. So then the center of the mass of the small triangle configuration that we considered will be at the origin. That is, x cm and y cm will just become 0, 0. And the three angles we get will become equal. That is, alpha equals beta equals gamma equals 2 pi by 3 or 120 degrees. Therefore, the ratios mu2 and mu3 will become both 1. And R del becomes this R1 into square root 3 and M becomes 3m1 here. So now we can calculate the effective mass M at the center of mass that causes the acceleration of mass m1. This is the effective mass which causes the acceleration. It is as if it is located at the center of mass and causes the rotation in the one body approximation form. So plugging in all this relationship between mu and r and alpha and all, we get this effective mass as m equals m1 by square root of 3. So plugging this in the acceleration equation, we get this: d square r1 by dt square is minus g m1 r1 square root 3 in the direction of r1. So this is the only possible solution for the given initial condition m1 equals m2 equals m3 from Newton's method. Let us now look at the conservation loss based method for framing and solving the three-body problem. The energy conservation equation involves summing up all the individual kinetic energy terms and all the pairwise potential energy terms. So the pairwise potential energy terms P12, P23 and P31 are shown here. And these are the position vectors of the three masses that we saw earlier, the same triangle configuration. So this is the total angular momentum A here, which is the sum of all the individual angular momenta due to mass m1, m2 and m3. Since we assume that the three relative angles alpha, beta, gamma are constants and the center of mass is equal to the center of rotation is at the origin, so we get using those two assumptions, we get that distance ratios are again constants, which is the same that we saw earlier. These are the distance ratios mu2 and mu3, and we get the three angular velocities of the three masses are the same. So we know the angular velocities are equal and the alpha, beta, gamma are constants, and so using these two facts in the angular momentum equation A, we get this. It can be this can be rewritten as this, and further it can be simplified as this, where m is a mass that we saw earlier. M is defined like this. The small m is defined in terms of m1, m2, m3 and the ratios. So this is just in the one body approximation format, where m is a constant, r1 is the variable radial distance, and θ1 is the angular displacement, instantaneous angular displacement. So in the net angular momentum equation, we get this, where A can be expressed in terms of the one body approximation. Exploiting the same alpha, beta, gamma or constants assumption, we can also reduce the net energy equation to the one body approximation form, like the angular momentum. So here the effective mass m appears in the potential energy term. This is the mass that causes the motion of vector r1, and this is the form of m. This is the effective mass. This is how we can write. So the effective mass m comes from the summation of the three potential energy terms. This m1, m2, m2, m3 and m3, m1. These are the potential energy terms, pairwise potential energy terms, and this comes, the effective mass m is because of this summation. So in case we want to find the radial force balance terms from the energy equation, we can simply differentiate the energy equation with respect to the radial distance. So this is what we get. If E is constant, dE by dr1 will be 0. So dE by dr1, if we calculate, from that we get this force equation, d square r1 by dt square minus r1 d theta by 1 by dt square plus gm1 by r square. This is nothing but a scalar form of this Newton's equation. So we can note from the form of equation derived from Newton's method is same as the form of equation derived from conservation loss. Both are in Kepler's one body approximation form. Only the details of the effective mass, this big M here and here, are different in the two methods. That is, M calculated here is different from M calculated here. So basically this is the expression for the effective mass from Newton's method, and on the top here we can see the expression from conservation loss method. In Newton's method, ultimately the definition of effective mass big M depends only on the values of m1, m2, m3, not on the geometric arrangement of these three masses m1, m2, m3. Since the effective mass m causing the motion of the position vector, that is according to vector r1 in this calculation, so the motion of the position vector defined according to Newton's method does not depend on the geometric configuration. It has a unique solution for any given m1, m2, m3 values. Whereas in the conservation loss based method, the effective mass m, big M, depends on the angular dispositions also. So we need to specify the angles alpha, beta, gamma as part of the initial condition. Suppose now we consider the same simple case study that we considered for Newton's method. That is, suppose all masses are equal, m1 equals m2 equals m3. Then the ratios mu2 and mu3 are dependent only on the angles alpha, beta, gamma, because m1, m2, m3 are equal. So the mass m can be written as shown here, this small m. And mu3 can also be written as this. Basically alpha plus beta plus gamma is 2 pi, so we can replace sine gamma by minus sine alpha plus beta. So mu3 can be written as this. So these are the definitions for mu2 and mu3. We just plug it into these calculations. So the effective mass big M, defined according to the conservation laws and under the condition m1, m2, m3, will get this huge looking complicated form. This is the entire form, because we have not specified alpha and beta and it depends on it. This is how it depends on alpha and beta when m1, m2 and m3 are equal. Since we have not specified the angles yet, the expression for the effective mass m according to the conservation laws has this huge complicated form. So let us specify some alpha and beta values in the above equation. Let us consider some sample values. So if m1 equals m2 equals m3 and beta equals alpha equals 2 pi by 3 or 120 degrees is the initial condition that we specify, then the effective mass and the final equation of motion we get from the conservation laws based method is same as Newton's method. That is, we get the effective mass as m1 by square root of 3, which is the same we got from Newton's method. And so the final force equation will also be the same. In Newton's method, this is the only possible solution. That is, m equals m1 by square root of 3 is the only possible effective mass in case of m1 equals m2 equals m3. And the three masses have to be all at 120 degrees separation from each other. That is in the Newton's method. This has to, if m1 equals m2 equals m3, then alpha, beta, gamma have to be 2 pi by 3. However, in case of conservation laws based method, alpha and beta can be anything. As long as alpha is less than 180 degrees, beta is less than 180 degrees, and alpha plus beta is greater than 180 degrees, so that gamma is also less than pi or 180 degrees. So if m1 equals m2 equals m3 and we assume alpha is 2 pi by 3 as early, but beta is not 2 pi by 3, beta is 90 degrees or pi by 2 radians in this case, then we get the distance ratios as this. From the earlier relationship we saw, the distance ratio mu2 will become 2 by root 3 and mu3 will become 1 by root 3, or mu2 is twice mu3. Then we get the effective mass m as this approximation. M, effective mass big M, is approximately 0.75 times the mass m1. From Newton's method, the only effective mass we get is this m is approximately m1 by root 3, which is m1 0.577 star m into m1. In conservation laws based method, m is a variable depending on alpha, beta, gamma. However, in Newton's method, it's a constant. This is the only value. So we discuss in detail about the stability of these solutions and the existence of chaos in Newton's method in future presentations and the PDF articles we upload on neophysics.com. Here we just demonstrated that the conservation laws based method gives a superset of solutions that we get from Newton's method. Therefore, Newton's method cannot be universal. Newton's method is giving only a small subset of all solutions where energy and angular momentum are conserved. We should possibly get rid of Newton's method and rely exclusively on conservation laws based method to frame and solve equations in physics. We end it here. Thank you. If you want to understand the concepts of physics in the clearest way, regardless of the concerns about scoring high marks in exams, please visit neophysics.com. Thank you again.